With it being July 5th, it is now officially the countdown to training camp. What is up, Finn fans? Yes, you could tell by the title of this video, I'm going to be talking about, I probably named it, the biggest questions going into training camp. So this essentially is things that hopefully we get answered with training camp and preseason before we actually get to the season. Hopefully we get a lot of these questions answered and we stop being nauseous from not knowing. But before we jump into that, I got a little bit of an announcement. With training camp coming up, I might have an opportunity for one of you beautiful human beings to potentially help me with my training camp videos. If you're interested, I don't know how I'm going to tell you to let me know. But I'm going to kind of assess how I want to do it. But I am probably going to ask maybe one, two, maybe more of you guys to help me with my training camp videos. In what way? I will let you know when the time comes. Hopefully, probably in like the next week or so, because training camp for the rookies starts in 2 weeks on July 19th. And then the vets will be coming in on July 26th. So I don't know if they're actually going to be doing on-field stuff when it comes to the 19th to the 26th. I'll get more clarity on that and I'll let you guys know. But again, just real quick, want to say, I might be asking some of you human beings, beautiful human beings, who want to help me with training camp videos. So when that time comes, I will let you guys know. But let's jump into this. So essentially, going into training camp, there's a lot of question marks. This team has a good amount of question marks. And I'm going to talk about those question marks. Now, I'm not even going to number them. I'm just going to start talking about them. And it's in no specific order to these are more important than the last things I say, or these aren't as important as the last things I say. These are just things I was jotting down because these are still things that I'm questioning. I'm like, well, will this happen or will that happen? So without me rambling on anymore, obviously, the biggest thing that we are questioning when it comes to the Miami Dolphins is the offensive line, right? We want to see the offensive line be better. For the love of God, we had one of, and it's not even like the worst offensive line in 2021. The Miami Dolphins offensive line last year was probably one of the worst in a very long time. I could probably bring up stats showing them compared to, I think 2020, the Chargers had 32nd ranked. I wouldn't be surprised if the Dolphins, when it came statistically, were worse than the Chargers offensive line. And if I go throughout the past decade of 32nd ranked offensive lines, I can probably tell you that the Dolphins last year was worse than those. It was bad. So we want to see this offensive line. If the Dolphins end the season with the 20th ranked offensive line, I'm happy. That's a great improvement, which is sad to say. It's sad to say, but it was just that bad. And bringing in Frank Smith. Now, I understand that he is just going to be the offense coordinator, but he did take that Chargers offensive line from 32nd ranked to 10th ranked, right? He did have that offensive line severely better for Justin Herbert to have a better season. And then they bring in Applebaum, who, again, Boston College had one of the best offensive lines in the nation. They understood that, right? Now, the offensive coordinator, offensive line coach that we had last year is still with the team. He's kind of like bottom tier assistant guy, because that's where he should have started. He should not have been thrown into the offensive line coach like that. Like, that was one of Flores' biggest mishaps, is thinking, oh, you'll be the offensive line coach. And then we all were like, well, why is the offensive line so bad? That's why. So is the addition of Frank Smith and Applebaum enough to, because obviously we have Connor Williams, who's going to be playing center. We have Teron Armstead, who's going to be playing left tackle. Those positions, in my mind, are solid, solidified, not have to worry about them. Robert Hunt He's slow, he's when we first drafted him and he came in, he was playing all right. Last year played really good. Can he continue that progression? It's the right tackle and the left guard spot. Now, is Eichenberg going to left guard? Who's going to be playing right tackle? Right tackle is an incredibly important position, especially with a left-handed quarterback. I don't think Austin Jackson, it's time to say he's a bust, he's a bum, move on from him. If you go back and watch my reaction and my breakdown of taking Austin Jackson at 18, I knew for a fact if the Miami Dolphins did not take an offensive line at 5, and I said this, you can go back, it's all, proof is on the tape. I said if the Dolphins don't take an offensive line at 5, the run from 5 to 18, they're going to be gone, and you're going to have to reach for an offensive lineman. Dolphins reached for Austin Jackson, but Austin Jackson has the physical traits and he has the talent to be good. You just have to put it together. He's never had a coach to help him put it together. With Frank Smith and Applebaum, can they put his physical traits and the way he fits in with a zone running scheme? He's actually a perfect fit for a zone running scheme. Can they put that together and make him the 18th overall pick in 2020? So these are all the questions, right? Because I do think coaching plays a big part in a player's development, but also it gets to a point where that player's just not good enough. This is the year. It's not just the year for Tua Tagovailoa. It's the year for Austin Jackson. It's the year for Noah Igbenogany. This is the year that these guys need to take this coaching, because this coaching staff is really good, and see what they can do. So offensive line is a big question going into training camp. And I'm not going to take it seriously. Now, I know Teron Armstead came out and said, you still should win without pads on. And he knows more than I do, obviously. But once the pads come on, that's when I'm going to really focus. That's when I'm really going to be looking at it and okay, how are they doing with the pads on? Because without the pads on, it's kind of hard to do what you got to do. So offensive line and the development and the right tackle position and all that stuff is a big question going into training camp. The next big question going into training camp, Brian Flores is gone. The biggest question when it came to Brian Flores was who's calling the defensive plays? Because for some reason, after the Buffalo Bills game, the second one, Halloween, the defense just clicked. Something happened and it clicked. And they interviewed Jerome Baker and he said, finally they stopped forcing me to try to be in a position that I wasn't, and they put me back to my position I was in last year. I don't understand. After like 3 losses, then if I'm the coach, screw it. After 2 losses, if I'm the coach, I start to say, okay, maybe I moved too many things around. Maybe just put it back to where the success was. 6 straight losses, and they thought, let's put these things back, right? And then they interviewed, I think it was Xavier Howard, and he said, we went back to 2020 Miami Dolphin defense. Again, you go through 6 straight losses, and that's at the point you think we need to go back to the defense that was working. Mind-boggling to me. But there was the whole debate, and there was the whole sources, rumors, BS that Brian Flores took the play calling away from Josh Boyer. 2020, Josh Boyer was calling the plays. Flores came out and said it. Even Josh Boyer came out and said it. Last year, this offseason, Josh Boyer said he was calling the plays. Brian Flores even came out in his press conferences and said, I'm not calling the plays. Even though he had a play sheet covering his face, he said, I'm not calling the plays. It's Josh, it's Josh, it's Josh. Well, here's the question for going into training camp. Can Josh Boyer continue the success that the defense has had? Because 2020's defense was really good. This past defense, it was mid. We were high in sacks. I think we were ranked 2nd in sacks. We were ranked high in pressure and all this stuff. But we were very mid when it came to passing defense and rush defense. We weren't good. We weren't bad. We were just a decent defense. Can Josh Boyer... Is it Josh Boyer or was it Brian Flores? Is essentially the question. Can Josh Boyer show I was calling plays in 2020 when the defense was kind of bringing along the offense, where Tua Tagovailoa, a rookie, was just trying not to lose the game. I was the reason. I was the play caller. It was me. So that is a big question because this defense is exactly the same. You just added pieces. You added some players in Tyndall, the rookie, and Evan Ingram. You added certain pieces to help depth and all that stuff. So is this defense going to be the same? That is a huge question because 2 years in a row, this is now the second year in a row. If my third year in a row. This is now the third. I'm not editing that out. You could just see my brain is just. I'm recording this July 4th. It's like what, 1 o'clock? Yeah, it's 1:14 in the morning. This is when I record some of my videos. So sometimes you guys are like, did he just say Ted Ginn instead of Jakeem Grant? That day I was tired. That day I do apologize for the slip up. But it's been the continuity. It's been the consistency of the same playbook, the same players, and everything. There should not be a lapse. And I'll talk more about that when we get to training camp and going into the season when it comes to expectations. But there should not be a lapse because this defense and these players are understanding and working together long enough that there shouldn't be a 4-game stint where, all right, well, they still need to get it together. And the Dolphins defense should run out. Week 1 against the Patriots, we should be shutting down Mac Jones. Another pick 6 off of Mac Jones. It should be that type of situation. So, again, is it Josh Boyer? Was it Brian Flores? That is a big question. Obviously, the next big question is Tua Tagovailoa. Again, I'm going to make a full video about my expectations on him. I'm going to go into full detail on what I expect from him this year, all that stuff. So that's going to be a video on itself, and I'm not going to go too much into detail on that stuff now. But it's an obvious this is his year. This is it. You get and this is how me and a lot of the sports analysts and even NFL coaches and on GMs, all that stuff, you get 3 years. You get 3 years to show what you are. It just so happens some players come out and they show it year 1. Some come and show it year 2. Some come and show it year 3. Some come and show it year 5, 6. All of a sudden you're like, well, where was that? When you're on team 3 and all of a sudden now you're showing that you're really good. This is the year. If he wants to be a Miami Dolphin next year, this is the year he needs to show it. Now, some people, and again, I'm delve more onto this in another video talking about his expectations, but some people want to put the success of the team on his shoulders. I don't agree with that. Some people think like, oh, if we don't make the playoffs, he's gone. I don't agree with that because Justin Herbert never made the playoffs, but he solidified himself as a franchise quarterback. Deshaun Watson didn't make the playoffs in 2020, but he put up really good numbers and showed he can play. You see what I'm saying? So he doesn't need to take the team to the playoffs to show I am the franchise quarterback. He needs to play well. And that's the biggest question. How is he grasping the offense? How is, we already saw he's working with Tyreek Hill and the wide receivers on their own, all that stuff. We need to see it develop on the field. We need to not hear from Westhoff and from certain, sources and stuff that the offense is looking bad. It needs to click, and it needs to click now. Again, but the offense, that's the thing where it's a new offense, so it might take a second, but Tua Tagovailoa is a big question, but I have a full video talking about that. The last thing I'm going to talk about for the question marks, right, because it's, we got the wide receivers. They seem to be, there's not much to talk about there. The run game, that's probably something also I'm going to be really focusing on, and that's a big question. Kind of coincides with the offensive line because if the offensive line is doing its thing and if the offensive line is successful, it kind of opens the lanes, obviously, for the run game. But it's a yin and yang. How many times have you guys heard me say that when it came to the quarterback and the run game and versus the offensive line? It's a yin and yang situation where the quarterback can hurt the offensive line as much as the offensive line can hurt the quarterback, and same can go with the running backs in the offensive line. You can open up a lane and show, hey, you hit the A gap where you're supposed to, or the B gap where you're supposed to, you're going to get 5-6 yards. Or that running back might see, but if I take that outside the tackle instead of hitting the gap, I have a potential to hit a home run touchdown. Instead of hitting that gap, they plant their foot, they try to go outside, all of a sudden the defensive end goes around, or they don't see that linebacker behind the defensive end. Boom, you get tackled for a loss. That's where the running back could hurt the offensive line. We opened the lane for you. You were supposed to hit the A gap. You were supposed to get the 5-6 yards, potentially break a tackle and take it to the house if you wanted to. You got greedy and tried to bounce to the outside. That's not on us that you got tackled for a loss. See what I'm saying? So it's a yin and yang situation. So obviously the run game is going to be a very important question. Also, and this is the last question that I could think of. Again, if you guys have any questions going into training camp, please comment below. But the defensive line. And when I talk about defensive expectations, which again, it's going to be in its own video because I have a ton of videos planned for you guys. You'll be surprised. We had a lot of sacks, but you'll be surprised how many times we had to blitz to get those sacks and how low the pressure number is, right? Versus the amount of blitzing and the amount of sacks. I would like to see the front four and the defensive line, or the front three / it all depends on the defensive scheme at that moment. I'd like to see them get pressure without blitzing. I'd love to see them get pressure consistently without blitzing, because then all of a sudden you're allowing and having the ability to have more coverage, which then forces the quarterback to make a decision quicker, because all of a sudden just the front four is getting after the quarterback, but his guys are still covered. Having a front, and again, I talk yin and yang, and I talk a relationship between the quarterback, running back, and the offensive line. The same is for the defense, the corners and the defensive line, and the linebackers and the defensive line. And I'll go more into detail with that in the expectation videos. But if we can get pressure with just the front four without sending blitzes, without taking a man out of coverage, all of a sudden your corners only really need to cover for about 2-3 seconds. And it's hard to run exotic routes on 2-3 seconds, because that's what I noticed with the Bills. If you get after Josh Allen and you get in his face and you only allow him 2 seconds to throw the ball because you're getting consistent pressure on him, and you don't allow him out of the pocket, he can't do the things he does. You saw that with Patrick Mahomes the first half of the 2020 Dolphins-Chiefs games, where we were constantly getting on him, throwing interceptions, making stupid mistakes. That's how you win on defense. So I'm interested to see, and again, this is my last question, how the Dolphins defensive line does against opponents that aren't the Dolphins, right? Because we're going to look at the Dolphins offensive line versus the Dolphins defensive line and start to question, a lot of running's happening, and Tua's getting time. He's carving up this defense. The defensive line regress. It's not going to be good. Or ton of tackles for loss and a ton of potential sacks. So the offensive line is garbage. But when they practice for a month or more, on and on and on, going up against each other, you start to pick up tendencies of the guy in front of you. He's dropping his shoulder. He's going to try to swing around me. Or I see he's planted his foot a certain way. He's going to try to, and then you start to pick up those tendencies. You have to play against opponents that aren't yours. That's why I'm glad we have 2 joint practices, and obviously we have preseason. So I'm very interested to see how this Dolphin defensive line does against not the Dolphins offensive line. And that's where the preseason and the joint practices come. Because if they are as disruptive not against this offensive line, then it's a good thing. Especially adding Melvin Ingram. I'm very excited to see what he can do for this Dolphin defense. But that's what I got for you. Those are my questions going into this training camp. If you have any that I did not touch upon, please comment below. I appreciate you guys. I read all your comments. But other than that, I will see you guys tomorrow. We're going to be breaking down the offensive line in the camp battle position. It's going to be a long one because we got a lot of offensive linemen. But other than that, like usual, stay classy. Fins up.